What's up, everybody? I am so excited for today's guest. She's an absolute powerhouse in the energy industry. In today's episode, I sit down with Katie Mehnert, CEO of Ally Energy. Katie has accomplished so much throughout her career, formerly the Global Director of Safety and Operational Risk at BP, to U.S. Ambassador at the Department of Energy under 2 administrations, to a published author and distinguished advisor to countless executives and leaders throughout the industry. I could go on and on all day about her accomplishments. She's truly an impressive person and professional. But rather than hear it from me, let's jump right into the episode. Well, Katie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad we could do this. And no, I'm really excited to dive into what seems like just getting to know you in the last few conversations is a very interesting, fascinating career with a ton of accomplishments, what we'll get to. But first, I just wanted to kind of start with give us a little bit of early context to Katie back in the days of whether it's college or university or what got you interested on the path that you're on now.
I'm going to go back to the 80s when I was a youngster. My father was in the oil industry and lost his job. And so I got to see firsthand what the bumps and bruises and the ups and downs are of the energy industry. And I remember he told me, he said, do not get into this. He preached that I try and go down a different career path. So don't become an engineer is what I heard, and don't get into energy. And so I did one of those things. I got into energy, so I went completely against his advice. But I like to think that I'm a people engineer. So I guess in 2 respects, I actually disobeyed my father and went down this path. But it's been an amazing journey, and helping people understand energy, evangelizing and being an advocate for the energy industry, but more importantly, getting people to understand the complex nature of it is one of the things I get up every day and get excited about. So.
Yeah. So with that, did you kind of go down more of I can't say more of a people route, but were you more interested in sort of the communication side, sort of the PR side? Is that how you felt like you could maybe lean into that aspect more of the energy industry?
Yeah, so I actually got a journalism degree. And I remember when I left LSU, it didn't feel like, you don't have experience. So how can I write about an experience I haven't had? So I started discovering this concept of being a problem solver, someone who could understand the current state, ask really good questions, and then think about the future state and design the future. And I actually love living very much in the future because I think it's exciting to be able to think about what could potentially be. So I got into management consulting, which is funny because it's not, a lot of people go down the business path and they get out, and they go get an MBA and then they join a big 4 or whatever. I was just your non-traditional. I'm not going to go into media, but because I understood the fundamentals of communication and being curious and asking questions, that took me down a path of project management. I got to know the utility industry, particularly deregulated markets when, early 2000s, Texas was going to market in ERCOT. It was fascinating in my early career because everywhere I went, there was some sort of crisis. So I like to tell people, like, why waste a good crisis is my career mantra. If you can come in and solve for a really unique problem, right, you're going to drive value. So early on, it was, big oil. I went to big oil and did time in big oil at Shell and BP. It completely opened my view of the world, which was amazing. And but was always in roles where I was helping to bring people to the center, right? Bring people together to solve a given problem, and to take all the richness and the diversity, right, of what people have to the table, make sure that it all got heard, right, so that we could, move the ball forward. So was in health and safety for a number of roles while in BP and Shell. Those were wonderful because it was helping the high hazards business evolve and make sure people went home safely. But it wasn't, about 10 years ago, I said, this is fun, but it's not me getting me up every day, and it's not exciting. I really want to look at how I can help impact the energy workforce and help design what that looks like for the future. And so that's why I cut my pay to nothing, didn't pay myself for 2 years, still pay myself terribly. Everyone thinks when you're an entrepreneur, you're a gazillionaire. If there's anything you're doing, you're constantly hustling. But this has been a great space for me to really land into. Now that I understand the energy industry, understand the policy and the people side, helping to kind of design what does that workforce look like if the future is exciting.
I want to know, like, taking a couple steps back, because it sounds like you've carried that kind of futurist idea with you your whole career, but it also sounds like you had a really interesting opportunity leaving college, obviously not necessarily going into maybe like pure PR for like big oil, but also not going into like the HR side. You got into kind of like you said, obviously health and safety, which is very like operational heavy, but also management consultant. So you had kind of a lot of different avenues coming together all at once. How do you think that shaped that first sort of like 5 years of your career where you're trying to find a spot that like you said really kind of sparks you and really reminds you or lets you know like, yeah, this is what I want to do?
Well, I think the most important thing young in your career is to try things because and back then we didn't have the tools that we have today, and the self-awareness and all of that. I mean, I feel like the whole element of human development has evolved. Today when students come out, they have a lot of options. They can see what those potential pathways are. A potential pathway was generally something you came upon yourself, or you had a mentor who said, this is a good kid. I'm going to take them along and maybe show them the way, or offer up potential pathways. So, early on for me, I feel like and I tell students, and I even tell people who are transitioning, right? They're leaving one industry and they're going into another industry. Explore. You have to explore and figure out, right, where's your best and greatest skill. And a lot of times we're not aware of our greatness. We have to have others say, you're really good at that. Because I think when you lean into the fear of what you're great at, right, that's when you're truly finding your passion, your path. And then you just got to apply those skills to a specific industry. In energy, I was fascinated because it was in my backyard. It was all around me. My father, again, said, don't do it. And I always like to, be a bit of a troublemaker, a good troublemaker, and say, I'm going to do what I want to do, right? And so for me, it was really much about exploration and being curious. And I think that those are skills that absolutely have to exist today. The advent of AI is changing the way we think about things, the way we work, the way we make decisions. But the human, as my father called it, the noggin, the brain, is where where we problem solve, how we think about things differently. And I think that's a big part of the process of career journey. So,
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you talk about embracing the idea of exploration. Obviously, there's a bit of a pun there between oil and gas and a personal mantra. But I think the perception is that when students look at an industry like oil and gas, they kind of make up their mind that there's really only a handful of disciplines or degrees in college that they can pursue. And if they're not doing those things, they don't really have a chance at breaking into oil and gas. Like you said, even your dad, he even said oil and gas is engineering. So even in his mind, it was, if you want to be in oil and gas, you need to be an engineer. Where do you think, I guess, some areas that our industry could maybe do better at telling a wider range of students, especially that have a broad set of disciplines and backgrounds and skills and talents that more or less everyone has something to contribute to the energy industry because it is so vast?
So look, for me, I when I think about this, because it's a journey. We all grew up in a world with abundant energy. Energy has been the bane of existence for long before we came along, and we've just accepted what's been given to us. We don't really understand how it's made. We understand the impact it has, right? We understand the financial impact when the cost goes up. So people know about energy when my energy price goes up. And then we know when the environment is when climate and the environment are impacted, and we have disasters or things that happen as a result of climate, right, change. We're aware of the bad side. So we're always aware of what I would call the bad side of energy and what it does. And I think if we could get into students' minds that this single-handedly is our generational opportunity to right the planet. And that may sound, very green and all of that. I get called green and I get called woke and I get called lefty and righty. But like I sit in the energy corridor, you guys sit in the energy corridor. We're right smack dab in the middle of where energy was born. That's exciting. We got to fix a lot. We have so much opportunity to innovate, so much opportunity to push this forward. This is a technical industry. This is an industry of problem solvers. This is an industry that needs people who can explain things. It needs accountants. We need a lot of people, despite what we hear, okay? And we just don't do a good job at painting the picture that this is where it's at. It's not banking. The banks don't move without energy, right? It's not transportation, aviation. These are all great things that are a byproduct of what the energy industry affords. But it's this dual challenge, more energy, right? Well, really, it's the triple challenge, right? It's more energy, it's sustainable, right? But it's affordable. And to me, that is a lifetime's amount of work that anyone could get into. Just don't, we're not, I think, messaging that right. So the more that we do to evangelize this message and kind of show the potential, I joke all the time, Rob, I wrote an op-ed in 2019 before COVID. That the headline in Newsweek was, why big oil should hire activists like Greta Thunberg. Full stop. Why? These kids want to see change. Come and be a part of it. Instead of marching on the streets, come march in the labs. Start helping us think through, right, these new ways of reinventing our energy systems. I look at this like the Renaissance, okay? I think there's a huge Renaissance coming for energy. We know that because of AI. We just had COVID in some respects. I look at history, and the bubonic plague wiped out Europe. And what happened after bubonic plague? It was science and art and innovation. So I feel like we are on that cusp, right, of what's next in energy. So I can't imagine doing something other than being in this industry. That's the story I feel like we need to be telling students, and we need to be telling people around us. We need more people looking at this problem so that we can get to solutions faster.
What do you think has changed the most since you got into the industry, again, sort of from a management consultant standpoint, but again, having that sort of PR view on things? What do you think has changed the most over the last, call it 20 years? Because now you obviously have the resurgence of newer subsectors within the energy industry, things like better water treatment, carbon sequestration, air separation units that are meant to kind of be associated with these big mega projects that we know are critical. Yet you do see kind of this slow trickle in of these new technologies and this almost this new group of people that are saying like, hey, yeah, the energy industry is essential. And like you said, the public perception is this big, bad, heavily polluting industry that only cares about money and production. Yet it does seem like there's a pretty big group of sort of this next generation that is heavily invested and very passionate about saying, yeah, let's maintain what we're doing and let's bolt on these new technologies or this new approach to kind of help usher this into the future, to help correct a lot of the wrongs that the industry sort of saw.
No, absolutely. Look, so it's like great question. There's so many answers to it. But when I fundamentally think about this question, what has changed? First and foremost, we're a global world. So globalization didn't exist when I was young. We were still very much in my backyard, right? So we didn't see the possibilities of beyond the borders of where we lived, right? And in many ways, globalization has complicated things, but it's also kind of connected the world, right? We now can see things. So transparency is increased, right? And the speed by which we're getting answers, right, is picking up. So yeah, it feels a little manic. Business is constantly moving. Things are constantly changing. And so I think that requires and brings about a new level of skill set. So I don't think it's about so much, can you learn a particular technology? You need to have a growth mindset. You need to be able to skill up. But to me, it's about resilience. It's about endurance. It's about going long. So I'm a marathon runner. I am not fast, okay? But I will finish. And I tell people, because they ask me all the time, what's the number one skill you need to last in this business? Resilience, because it's very lumpy and bumpy. But here's the thing. the world is lumpy and bumpy. It's not just energy. Every single vertical right now is going through massive transformation. So some people call it a meta crisis. I call it like massive opportunity, right? The world is starting to say, okay, we need to move into a different direction. What does the economy look like? What does the environment look like? What does this kind of new world order, right, look like? Because these happen every 100 years or so, and we're kind of due for one, right? So when I look at that, I go, what has changed? Well, gosh, access, visibility, right, connectedness. I'm pleased to see that the energy industry is starting to converge. We're starting to see, oh yeah, so utilities are connected to oil and gas, and solar can be here, and nuclear. We're starting to see the possibilities of all energy, not just drill baby drill, or everything is solar. It can't be that way. My hope is that now that we have this resurgence of information and people and knowledge and technology, is that we're going to be thoughtful about how we're going to apply energy technology. For instance, aviation. We're not going to power aviation through solar, okay? But where can we apply specific technologies and even carbon reduction technologies, right, to get at a very specific, right, this high energy use case so that we can lower those emissions? Nobody in this world wants to live in a polluted planet. Nobody. So this concept that this is a political thing is crazy to me. Energy is jobs, energy is AI, right? All of these things are opportunities for people to be productive and to live productive lives. And so we need to harness all of these changes that we see today. The connectedness, like I said, the transparency and the visibility of the opportunities. Years ago, we didn't have that. Things move slower, obviously, and you could make the argument that they were maybe a little less chaotic. But today's about resilience. Today is about, we've got to get caught up and build infrastructure, right, all over the world to adapt to the new environment.
I love that you use the word resilience, and I wanted to kind of ask a follow-up on that. Is someone who is sort of either a self-proclaimed visionary or, like you said earlier, kind of a futurist, how did you keep that sort of at the core of who you were throughout your whole career? Because I think it's very easy, especially throwing yourself in the middle of a giant industry like oil and gas and energy in general. How did you, was that a skill that you had? Was that something that you had to work on? Did you have people around you kind of that you could bounce ideas off that were very encouraging? Or was it something that, like you said, you just kind of had to trip and fumble your way through it and just keep reminding yourself just to stay the course?
Well, look, so I'm a big fan of resilience. We actually started something called the Grit Awards years ago, which was all about demonstrating, look at these great people, right, that are doing wonderful things in the whole of the energy industry. Because this challenge of energy is a long-term thing. Okay, it is not a one-hit wonder, right? We have to think of it that way. When I think about my journey, I stumbled, I failed, I fail. I fail now, right? I fall. I'm more okay now than ever to fall, but fall fast and fall forward and make sure that you, right, don't fall again doing the same thing. People did come along the way. I'm a big believer now, I'm turning 50 this year, in manifestation. And that is, you put yourself into once you figure out what you want and that you're good at, be okay leaning into your strength and put into the world that this is what you love to do. Because then that's like a magnet. It attracts people to you, right? I would read people that I admired, right? I would surround myself with as much information as possible. Many years ago, I started following a guy by the name of Seth Godin, completely awesome man, awesome human. I also started following Sheryl Sandberg, right? These are people that the internet gave us access to, right? You didn't have access to this stuff. You had to go to a library to get a book to read about a good person, right? Who you could look to as a role model. So I started, following these people. Ray Dalio, I'm a big Ray Dalio. He's an economist, right? I looked at Steve Jobs. I would follow dead people, okay? Ronald Reagan, like figures in society who were in moments of challenge and change, and they changed the way the world thought about something, right? And so when I think about that, I think, for me, it was about finding those people and then finding more of those people, right? And creating that tribe of people around you who probably went through the same journey, you know? So have had the chance to meet Sheryl Sandberg. Cheryl's a friend, right? Like I've had it. And so these things don't happen without you getting over the fear, getting over your own ego, right? Recognizing, right, you're only on this earth for a short amount of time, right? And nobody ever can, tell you when your time is up. So making the most of it, right? Like making every moment count. But look, I had to go through medical issues, right? I had to have my own, moment of near death to say, wow, okay, like this is life. And so you can choose consciously, right, a path for yourself. They didn't teach you that in school, right? That's like the stuff you learn, it's the school of hard knocks. Now my kid, she's 14. She's much smarter, and her generation is much smarter, right, than we were kind of growing up. So kids are growing up faster. They're becoming more self-aware, right, because they have those tools. It's a way of saying like, no, I had no path. I had to figure the path and then let the path pull me, right? When you start putting it into the world and you're not unafraid of who you are and what you stand for, then things just start, coming your way. And I'm lucky because I'm 50 or I'm turning 50. A lot of people don't get this opportunity. They don't get to this point, right? So every day I wake up with great, a sense of gratitude. And then I tell myself, how can I help the Katie that's out there? Do I see someone like myself, right, who's trying to find a path? And it's my job, just as it's been others who've helped me pull those folks up and pull them along and let them know that they're not alone in their journey, right? So
No, I love the way that you put that, because whether you put an official title like a mentor on that, or however you want to look at it, I think one of the biggest things that we miss out on is, like you said, whether you're motivated through manifestation or you have these goals in mind, or you think your career to success should look a certain way, or it should be linear. And like you said earlier, sometimes people get knocked off course and they're not always equipped to motivate themselves to get back on track. I kind of wish people got to see more of that nitty gritty kind of ugly part of people's careers. Like, yeah, success looks different to everyone. And even now, I'm sure there's things in your life now that you could look back at and go, yeah, I failed at that. So what? I'm here now because of it, or I learned something from it. I think so many people are afraid to fail because, again, whether it's a highly competitive industry, or people are being too hard on themselves, or they just lose sight of the bigger picture. I wish people kind of understood more that failure is part of success. You can't be successful.
No, you're absolutely right. And Rob, I think a lot of it is even goes deeper. And that is, we are all brought into the world and we're raised in a certain environment. And we either become a product of our environment, or we become better. And it's a choice. Okay. And everyone has been through some sort of adversity in life, loss, potentially abuse, right? Hard things. And I remember a time when I was a jealous person, I was an angry person, I was a hurt person, because guess what? Everybody goes through those emotions. You are human. If you've never been any of those things, I'm going to ask you, are you living under a rock? Okay. When I see people who really struggle, right, with the angst, you know what I mean? They're upset. They're critical. I say to myself, they haven't done the hard work of dealing with, right, overcoming what's bothering them. And a lot of times it's just fear of failure, fear of success. Oh my word, have I had that one? It's not easy being successful. I know, sounds crazy, right? When people think that you're so successful, right, they treat you differently, right? They treat you differently. Some people are in your court. Yeah, you got this. You got haters who, again, have that in their heart to just be angry, right? I can't talk to you. I can't have a conversation with you. I'm mad at you. No, I'm mad at myself. That's what that is. So I tell people, I'm like, when you realize, like, all of a sudden, wow, like what's around me and what's ahead of me is unlimited, borrowed time and resource. You get moving, towards that purpose. 10 years ago when I left BP, they put me through a course. I got to do like an outplacement course. It was a choice to leave. And I'm glad I did because I knew I wanted to do something different. I sat on a beach with a bunch of executives and we were asked to write our eulogy. Rob, best, most amazing therapy, whatever you want to call it, right? Okay. Because it got me clear about, wow, what do I want Rob to say when I'm not in the room anymore, or my daughter, or my husband, or the people I love, right? And I've seen more people obviously lose their lives, and I'm like, wow, this is going to happen at some point. So it sounds a little kind of morbid, but when you kind of have that moment and you have the experiences, you have the hardship, you kind of sit back and you go, let it rip, put the foot on the gas, be who you are, manifest, because it's not guaranteed.
Yeah, I think the fear of people standing out, I think, is terrifying for a lot of people. Again, especially in such a massive industry. I'm sure people can find different career paths in either smaller industries or smaller businesses where they're allowed to kind of explore and experiment and mess up. And it's like, yeah, it's low stakes, but like in a high stakes industry like oil and gas and like energy, it's like it's hard enough to get the job anyways. It's almost like you have to know someone, or you have to have someone vouching for you. You have to have the ideal recruiter to get you in somewhere. And then once you're there, you're like, I have to be perfect, and it's like, if you mess up, you're afraid of your boss, or you're afraid of coworkers, or like you said, you become jealous because they didn't mess up, or they didn't miss a deadline. And I think it can turn into like this crushing feeling where people can lose sight of the bigger picture of, well, who am I? How does this affect me, and what's next for me in my career, and even my personal development? Like you said, writing your eulogy juxtaposed to professional development is kind of a scary thing.
Oh, it is. And Rob, let me tell you, like, the other thing, when you just touched on something around identity. Okay. And so when we were growing up, we were in a time of peace and prosperity. And I'm not saying we're not in a time of prosperity, because we are, there are some that are prospering. Okay. But we were comfortable with who we were as a society, right? We were great. They weren't perfect. Okay. You look at today, trying to define who you are in a world that's trying to figure out who it is, is really hard. And when you think about what this industry does, it underpins it all. That's why I'm like, it's the coolest, gnarliest thing to be a part of. And when I leave, I want people to be like, wow, like, she did it differently. She went hard and fast and she ran. She never let a number define who she was or a title, because I do think that we are in an inflection point in our world. We are totally trying to figure out, where's humanity going, right? Is this working for everybody, right? Are we going to be around? Are we going to adapt to this changing environment? What are the technologies? What new wealth is possible, right? And ingenuity is in our human DNA. Like, this is who we are, right? So I think it's an exciting point, because while it is stressful, really stressful, right? People are being pushed. We're going to see who is going to emerge on the other side of this, which is what's next. And I'm always thinking, what's next? Like, what's next? Like, where's the opportunity? And I think it's my job and the job of other people to help people who want to, climb the mountain, and go and create whatever that new technology is, that new way of working, or that new way of making money, or the new economy. So it's why I love being 49 years old in the middle of this, as we call it in Louisiana, a gumbo, which is like a soup of stuff, right, thrown in a pot, because it's an opportunity to leave a legacy, leave something behind, leave it in a better place than you came into it.
Yeah. I want to touch on the idea of what's next, almost with a view of looking backward, though, not quite looking forward just yet. Because for me, sort of as an outsider to you and your career, it looks like you've had a handful of pretty major shifts in your career, always looking at what's next. And it seems like you have a pattern of taking these big leaps. And one of those things that I want to focus on and ask you about is your time as an ambassador at the Department of Energy. Tell me what that was like, and what was that sort of draw for you to make that shift?
So first of all, when you're asked to do something, people like to call it voluntold. You say yes. So Cheryl has a saying: "You're asked to get on a rocket ship, get on the rocket ship and go." Right. And so I didn't know what I was saying yes to. I was just saying yes because I knew I needed to say yes. There was something in me. And look, the little girl who was 5 years old, I wrote about this on my blog. It's still out there. I wanted to be the president of the United States. I wanted to be the first female president of the United States. I said that when I was 5, which is it's fascinating, right? Do I want that job? No, 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 no. Don't want that job, okay? But the idea of a woman, or possibility of someone like me, or someone like my people in my world, that was what I was dreaming as a child. And so when I got the opportunity to be an ambassador, which we were defining, right? I love those kinds of situations because you get to come in and create and think and look and explore and do the things I love. I learned very quickly, wow, this is how the world works. Governance, law. At one point I wanted to go to law school, couldn't hack the reading, married a lawyer, just as good. Surround myself with wonderful lawyers who are really good at that stuff. But I thought, okay, I want to learn more about policy and I want to be able to impact workforce, right? Because this is the work I'm working on, but now I have the ability to bring whatever knowledge and skill I have to the table and work with a lot of people to solve this problem. So that was fun. And it happened under Trump 1. And I was excited. And of course, as soon as it happened under Trump 1, I was a Trumper. Then when Biden in, the Biden folks said, stick around. I think they I was a middle of the road kind of person and reasonable. So it was great. Like I got to stick around kind of during the Biden administration, and it wasn't an appointed role. So it wasn't a political role. But generally, when there's administrations, they come in and they change things. They want to move people in and out. And so as a private sector person sitting at the table in 2 very different administrations, that was fascinating. And then out of nowhere, I'm surprised and delighted that Secretary Granholm under Biden had me appointed to the National Petroleum Council, which is like the top 220, mainly men, in the petroleum industry that are advising the secretary on petroleum matters. Are you kidding me? That's amazing. I have a seat at this table. I have an opportunity to listen and learn from, leaders, think about, and carve out what the future could potentially be, learn about policy. I'm like, this is just making it's more right to be better at what I'm doing back home in Texas, right? So not too long ago, I had a couple of people again voluntold me that, oh, you should the UT campaign school for women. There's a campaign management school for women, which helps women get into politics. I said, okay, I'll check this out. Might be a new network of people to meet, and it's definitely a learning opportunity. And so what the school does is it teaches women how to run for Congress, run for local office, run for state office, run for school board, or become an operative, right? Or someone who would go into an administration and, and be a part of government. Right now, I'm looking at government and I want to run. I don't want to be a part of government. Okay. And that's not a knock saying, oh, I'm anti-Trump or this, whatever. I am anti-government right now, period. Because the government is going through its own identity crisis. Like I'm saying, we're in this shift. Like, what do we want to be? So when I think about the next thing, I want to be about redrawing or helping to draw what that new America is going to look like with the energy lens, because we're going to demand so much more energy, right, to push innovation, particularly with AI. So I don't know what it is. I just know that it's something around taking the private sector experience, taking the desire to continue to evangelize energy and people, but to build whatever that new future is. But boy, let's make sure everyone is getting an opportunity to sit at that table, right? And by the way, that's not because we're quotas or anything like that, but I grew up in this country where it was like, you worked hard, you got a seat at the table, right? You did part, you persevered, you did the work, right? You had the opportunity. I feel like we're on the cusp of something new in that space, and I'm excited about potentially being a part of it. So, everyone asks me, are you going to run? I'm like, I don't know. Some days I feel like it, and then other days I'm like, no, whatever I do, I gotta get Allie, my daughter, into college. So that's at least a 4 or 5 year experience. So it won't be in this administration. I've been asked in different administrations to participate, and take roles. And I've told everybody I'm entertaining something at some point, but I'm not here to pick a side. And I don't know, I might not do well in politics because today's politics, you got to pick a side. You've got to, kiss the ring of whoever the leader is on the left, right. I'm not in the middle saying, hey, let's get to something sensible and some sort of rational middle to solve.
Yeah, especially right now, as the left and right seem to be further apart than, well, definitely than I can ever remember. It's a bit scary. I think there's a lot of really, really smart, motivated, well-intended people that right now, similar to you, are kind of pushed away from the idea of government and policy because they're like, I don't want anything to do with it right now.
But you see, I feel like, Rob, that's when I do best. When people are like, I'm going to give up on this, that's when I feel like I'm like, okay, that's an opportunity to help people understand that, yeah, it's hard, but if I can do it, like you can do it, and we can do it together. We are so much better together than we are on our own. And that's been the hardest part of being an entrepreneur. I was early. I still am early. I'm always thinking about the future. So it's kind of hard to find the people around me that can believe that, something like that's possible. It's getting easier because I'm finding phenomenal people to surround myself with. My business partner, Dr. Paul Stoltz, is one of them. He's studied adversity and resilience for 38 years. He has a metric by which you can measure, your adversity. I'm getting to a place where I'm finally, I've got my crowd and my crew, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to go it alone. And so I tell people, like, our job is to figure out who we are, find our path, find our peeps, and put the foot on the gas. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing right now, at least before whatever's next.
Yeah. Well, you're obviously a very highly intelligent person, and I want to get your thoughts on. You said a lot of things right there about adversity, resilience. How do you think those can kind of be weaponized against things like imposter syndrome? Like you said that you were asked to serve these positions, and it was a big unknown, and you just kind of thought, yeah, I'll just jump into it and see what happens. And then did you personally any of those moments where you're actually sat at that table looking around and you're going, what am I doing here? Why am I even here?
So it's interesting. It happens only when I stand alone that I feel vulnerable. So I'll give you an example. I love shining a light on things and people that matter so we can move the world forward. People think that means I love the spotlight. I don't. It is an uncomfortable place. It really is. I started a business called Pink Petro. I hated the color pink. I was 80 pounds heavier. I did not want to wear pink. I didn't feel confident, right? I didn't exude confidence. I wanted to be in the corner, balled up in a little ball, sometimes crying my head off, right? And I tell people, I'm like, yeah, I got EQ, but boy, I got my moments when I'm a hot head and I don't respond to things the way I ought to because I'm human. But I try to tell people, like, just be human, right? Just be better and better and better, right? Strive to become the best version of yourself, right? Each and every day. So when you say that, it's like, yeah, no, I mean, so back last summer, right after Climate Week. So we got Houston Energy and Climate Week off the ground last year. Big feat, big undertaking with volunteers. And, we pulled it together, pulled it off, and I was exhausted. And I got rushed to the hospital. And I was septic shock, like the world was coming to an end. We had to rush in. And the doctor asked me, to get out of here, you need to ask yourself, what's bothering you? I want you to look inside of yourself and start asking yourself some questions. And one of the things that I discovered is I hate asking for help. I hate putting myself and my needs into the world. Guess what? Everyone does, right? So I started this journey of writing my third book called The Ask. It's coming out in September. I hope it'll be out like right around the kind of year anniversary of when this all happened. But what I'm trying to teach people is like, it's okay to ask. Actually, if you don't ask, you don't get. Manifestation doesn't happen, and you don't get to do the things you love. And what's going to happen? At some point, your time is up, right? So all these pieces are kind of starting to fit together for me. But yeah, I mean, I have insecurities just like any other person, right? Just because I'm a larger than life personality, I'm passionate about what I do. I have feelings, right? I have days when I'm terrible. And what I tell myself is it's okay. You're not supposed to be perfect. Your job is not to be perfect. In fact, you need to be perfectly imperfect so that you draw out imperfection in others, because the more genuine we are, the more connected to who we are, the more connected to our work we are, I think the more productive we are as a society. I mean, I know that's very big of me to say, but like at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. So yeah, I mean, I get it all the time. Go stand in front of an audience of, I don't know, 5,000 people and talk. Oh my God, I'm going to go before Boris Johnson. Like, oh, what do I say? You know what I mean? So there is that, but to overcome that, a lot of what I do is just draw upon the strengths of previous experiences. And I remind myself, it is your job to live what you believe, right? So
I think it's you're right about the notion of just being human. Lean into being human. Treat people like they're a person, and maybe, like you said, draw out their imperfections and show them your imperfections. And now we can a solution and move forward. I think definitely in our industry. I think it happens across so many, the tech industry as well, our industry, finance, whatever, where we're almost unintentionally dehumanized just in the way we speak to colleagues and speak to people at other businesses and other companies. Because, like, yes, we all have to be on the same page and make sure that we're using the same terms so we all know what we're talking about. But this corporate that's just so heavily laden with corporate jargon and buzzwords and things that people use just to either make themselves feel more important or feel smarter or feel like they're contributing, I think robs us from the actual opportunity that's right in front of us, which is like, hey, well, this is just a room of people. We're just having a conversation. Let's just this through and figure out what we need to do. We don't need to like drown ourselves with these just nonstop flurry of buzzwords and jargon.
absolutely. And the only thing I would add to that is you have to remain open. Not everyone is going to accept what you have to put out there. And so you just have to be prepared that not everyone's going to be open to having, a conversation. Everyone's going to be open to your ideas, and that is okay. Just remember, it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them, right? But extend yourself, lean into that hard stuff. Don't run away because it's hard. Actually, the hard stuff is the stuff we're supposed to be doing, not the easy stuff. So,
well, you wear a ton of hats. You're a writer, you're a CEO, you're an event host, you're an ambassador, an advisor, a futurist. Of all those things right now, and I know you've mentioned a few just during our short now, what has you the most excited right now for the
it's
future?
always exciting. It's always exciting because it's an opportunity to define a new path, to drive prosperity, to bring to a better place, to bring yourself to a better place. I can't imagine not living in the future. My poor husband has to he's like, okay, that's nice that you're thinking over here. I need you to think here right now. Okay. Like, what's right in front of you, Katie? But yeah, the future, that would be my answer. Yeah.
Well, of all those different paths that you've taken, and again, big shifts and changes in your career, these different projects you've thrown yourself into, looking back, and appreciating that this might be a very difficult answer to find, what is maybe the one thing through all that you wish you would have known that you would definitely pass on to the next generation, or maybe someone who wants to accomplish similar things to yourself?
Yeah. So you can't Photoshop personality and be yourself. Nobody else is better qualified. I mean, look, I was a social outcast as a child. I was beat up and thrown into garbage cans. I've got all this stuff on my blog. People can read about it. I learned very quickly that I was different and unconventional in my thinking. And it was hard, as a kid, because I had to learn how to cope. At some point, though, along my journey, I had enough people, and more importantly, the most important voice, my inner voice, said, you are more than okay. You are really okay, and you need to put yourself into the world. And so I try and tell people, like, that is the number one thing. Take up your space in this world, right? Because we need those different thinkers, and we need people thinking about things differently. If we thought about everything the same way, well, I mean, the same thing drives the same outcome. So that's what I would say. I would tell people, like, be okay with who you are, right? Make sure that you don't Photoshop who you are. And please, you are the best qualified. You know how to be you. Don't let the noise around you guide you down the wrong path.
Yeah, I think the danger when people start photoshopping their personality in themselves, if they're doing it to fit in, eventually you don't even know who you are anymore. So when you say something like that, be you, eventually someone can look around and go, I don't know what that means anymore. I don't even recognize myself.
And how soul-sucking is that? Like, that is a waste of time. Time is precious. So once you know who you are, like I said, you got to put your foot on the gas and go, and know you're not going to make everybody happy, but it's not about making them happy. It's about you being happy, because you being happy is the number one thing. You driving your life and your career is the number one thing.
Well, without giving too much away, tell me more about your book that you have coming out later this year.
So, look, I'm super excited about the Ask. The Ask looks at when to ask, how to ask, when not to ask. And then it's stories of people and their asks, because I don't have all the answers. That's the other thing I want to make sure, Rob, that people understand. I'm human. I don't have all the answers. No, I know the spotlight terrifies me, right? Like, there are all these things that people, I think, have an assumption of. So I said to myself when we were writing the book, like, I need to tap into people around me who've successfully navigated a scary situation called leaning in and asking. Sheryl Sandberg asked a question that got me perked up to become an entrepreneur. And that was, what would you do if you weren't afraid? That's a big question, right? And not everybody can answer that right away. It takes time to get, to sojourn that journey and to find your way. But, the Ask represents a collection of stories around different people, different backgrounds. It's kind of there to demonstrate that the world is a changing place. The world needs more questions, right? The world needs you to put yourself, into the, and so it's kind of, in a really strange way too, something I'm living in the moment. I'm learning how to ask better. I'm learning how to put myself out there. I'm learning how to say, it's okay that not everybody likes me. It's okay that I prefer X or Y, right? It's okay. So I want to help people do that through the book. And my hope is that people will go online and tell their stories of asking. Because the more we show that asking is okay and normal, I really believe we're going to drive solutions and solve some of these big challenges like we have in energy and others of life.
Where can we find your book when it's available?
So it's such a great question. I'm going to have all the information up on actually katiemehnert.com. I have a website that I sometimes I don't have as much time these days, or I don't have enough time into writing. But it'll be out on katiemehnert.com. So you can check it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to read it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, as people go as they reach the end of whatever it is they're pursuing, whether we like it or not, most people are known for, like, the last thing that they do. When you retire, when you go out, it's kind of like whatever they were doing last, that's what they become for. But I think it's a fun question to ask guests that come on the show. What was the very first thing you did? Your very first job, like the first that you can even remember, whether it was a paper route as a kid or doing something to help put yourself through school? What?
I was the Wendy's Super Bar girl.
Wendy's Super Bar.
Yeah, Wendy's had a Super Bar. I don't even know if they have a Super Bar still, but I restocked the Super Bar, and then I moved from Super Bar to, like, burgers and then fries. And then I got to be the cashier, and then I got to be the outside person who, greeted customers, which I loved, right? I had a lot of fun because it was in the heat. So it was, and, I got to interact with people. So that's what I did first.
From Wendy's to the White House?
Oh, man. I don't know, man. That's aspirational. Maybe. maybe, but we'll see, right?
Wendy's to Washington.
Okay.
We can say
Or
that.
even Austin, or
Austin.
or the hall downtown, in Houston.
Sure.
I think making is about looking around you and finding something where you can make a difference. So I'm still in that journey, and I'm excited to be exploring it.
Sure. Well, I definitely wait. I'm gonna keep my eye out on your career, what comes next, because, like I say, the accomplishments thus far are absolutely incredible. The impact you've had on the industry, on the people that you serve, the workforce, it's been extremely cool. And it sounds like you're just getting started. It sounds like you still got that good sense of what's next and where do I fit in. So I'm very excited to see what you take on.
Well, me too, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. Sometimes talking about it and reflecting on it is a reminder that I have to just keep going, keep putting one in front of the other, and making sure that I live every single experience that I can before it's my time before my time.
Sure. Well, speaking of time, we've taken up pretty much the bulk of it here. So I'll let you get back to your day. I won't take any more of your time, but I really appreciate you going on and speaking with me today, Katie, and I loved hearing your story. And again, I'm very excited to see what comes next for you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for all that you do.
All right. Thank you so much.